All right. We're going to do a quick video on the production checklist. Whether this is for your brand or you are a fashion consultant and you're helping somebody else become ready for production, that's what this video is about. I'm going to go through each of the things that you need to be prepared for production so that you can actually smoothly move through that process. The biggest point to make here before we start is that most people confuse product development and pre-production with fully ready production. When we say production, we're talking about the actual cutting, sewing, printing, folding, packing, trimming of bulk units. And so it's really important that we separate that from the organization, the sourcing or the finding of fabrics, the pattern making, which is creating the general engineered fit of the garments, the samples, the prototypes, working with vendors to figure out where your stuff is coming from, doing lab dips. There is so much that goes into product development. And if you've done a good job and you have completed your product development properly, not only do you have finished samples, but you have the blueprint for exactly how a manufacturer would go into production. Okay. So what this is a really, really straightforward document that shows whether somebody is ready to move into the production phase. So here, kind of what we're saying is we hope you're ready, but we need you to prove it to us. So I'm going to go through this list really quickly. So the first thing to qualify to move into production, you need to have approved fabric trim and labels, meaning you've already made, not only have you already made samples with these fabrics, these trims, and you have the labels, but they're written down somewhere, meaning, and I can go in another video to explain what a bill of materials is, but essentially there is one place where it shows all the fabrics that you're going to be using for each style, and not just what fabric, but the style information, the width of the fabric, the color, the composition, the lead times. I mean, anything that you gather from these vendors when you're sourcing, all that stuff is there. And it's written right here. So this is something, if you don't have it, you can go back and get that information. Next thing is fabric swatches. So to run production, we're going to need to have swatches of these fabrics so we know which thing goes with which. And so having swatches of those ready to go outlined for each SKU is really critical. Third thing is the labeling the face of the fabric, because sometimes you use the back of the fabric and sometimes you use the front. It just depends on your design. And so noting that. And then the last part is all trim, including labels. This has to be organized. So you don't want to just sort of like have stuff just randomly sent, right? What you want to do is actually organize it so that the people that are going to be making your stuff know which trims go to which of your garments. This is going to help you actually get better pricing. This is going to avoid frustrations with you and your manufacturer because they're having to do lots of extra work that's not part of production. All of this organization is not production. What it is pre-production, or it's sourcing. And so the more you can do to organize all of your trims, your labels, and everything into one place, the easier it's going to be, because the manufacturer, once you get to manufacturing or production, they really want to start the process of cutting, sewing, printing, packing, actually just doing the bulk. Okay. All right. The next thing is, if you do not have some of these things and you need IndieSource to actually find them for you, you can write that down here. And what we'll do is we'll give a quote based on not just the production price, but the sourcing of some of these materials. Now, if we don't know what the material is, we won't quote a material price point, right? So if you're just giving us a product and you're saying, hey, I want pricing, well, that means you need to do development. So expect that unless you have all of your fabric and everything sourced, you're just going to get a price on the labor portion, because that's what we can quote. And until you determine what fabrics and trim you want, that can't be quoted yet. So you can put that down right here. Number two. So number one is materials. Number two is an approved base pattern. This is the two-dimensional engineered blueprint of your garment that we use to make a three-dimensional product, right? And oftentimes people are in different phases of this. Maybe they have a pattern that's not totally done and they need it to be revised and edited. Okay, you can mark that down. Maybe it's in a physical form and you need to be digitized. We can digitize it and put it in the computer before we start to do marking and grading. Do you need an engineered placement? So do you have artwork for a pair of leggings that really needs to go on top of that pattern so that we can do sublimation printing, for example. And, you know, if you have everything you need, this is sort of like a checklist, right? So it says, do you have notches? Do you have grain lines, labels, seam allowance, slopers, placement or non-placement? If you do have it and you're not sure, we need you to submit it to us so that we can review to see if you have these things. And if you don't, right, it's okay. It just means that we're going to need to do that work and make sure that you're production ready. Again, this all comes down to protecting your production. If you do not have production that is, sorry, if you don't have a pattern that is accurate, then ultimately you risk the whole production being botched. So you want to make sure that your pattern is good. So number 2 is your pattern. Number 3 is a completed pattern card. The best way to explain this is your pattern are your ingredients and the pattern card is the recipe. It tells you what to do. It tells the sewers what to do, the number of pieces. And now here, it must include all pattern pieces, sewing instructions, trim quantity, measurements, fused pieces. It gives us clarity on what it is that we're making and any specs that you have as well. It's really important to provide. So if you have paid another pattern maker to make you a pattern, they should have provided a pattern card. If they didn't, there's a big problem with that. All right, that's number 3. Number 4 is your production ready sample. So if you've done development, you already have a sample. Hopefully it's fit approved. It's in the fabric that it's going to be produced in. Sewing construction is the same and nothing's changed. Like this is actually the garment that you want to make. Now, if there isn't, then you can mark one of these other areas here. You could say it's finished, production ready sample. You could say it needs a revision or it needs a production sample, which is common. But we do need to know if it needs some sort of other alteration. Again, that sort of pushes us back into development. We're not ready for production until we have a finished sample that's exactly what you want. So that's number 4. Number 5 is a completed PO form. It's not necessarily that we need the order, like a live official order, but we need to know what the deliverable looks like and what we're going to be providing the brand in the end. So how many sizes, styles, colors, a breakdown per SKU, which is a unique item, right? So it's the crew neck t-shirt that has the cat artwork and it's dyed in orange and it's a small. That's the SKU breakdown. That's like the lowest, most intricate explanation of the product. And there's going to be 30 units of that. You would do that in a matrix, which we have a PO form on our site, and anybody on my team can send it to you. Let's see what else. It should include packing instructions. Do you want this to be bulk packed or folded individual poly bagged? How do you want it to be packed? Address where it's going to be sent, shipping account number, and desired delivery date. All of these things are going to help our team, first of all, give a quote for the order, because if we don't know what we're making, it's impossible for any manufacturer to give you that quote. So the completed PO form, or we call it even an RFQ, it's the RFQ, request for quote, it just translates into a PO form. It's the same thing. We just need to know this information. So that's number 5. And then number 6 is artwork. So if you're doing printing, embroidery, or any sort of artwork, think labels, heat transfers. I mean, there's so many different things, and it's something that we're handling, meaning it's not a hang tag that you're sending us, so we're just putting in the bag. It's something we need to actually print. Then that's something that we need to know. We need to have artwork in a vectorized format. We need the dimensions of the artwork to be already done or to be on a document that we can see, so it shows us. Placement, where on the garment does it go? We need color standards, so it's this Pantone. We need a print quality standard, type of print requested, water-based, plastisol discharge. If you don't know, it's okay. We need to know what you do care about, what your non-negotiables are, okay? So those are the 6 things needed to actually move into production. Now, as you guys may know, when you're done with that sample, we do need to do marking and grading, and this is really a pre-production initiative, so obviously it's the best scenario for us to have marking and grading done. If you don't, we can take your base pattern, we'll grade it into the sizes, create a marker, and once we have the marker, we know exactly how much fabric we need to order. At that point, we're in a good place, because what we need to do is order the fabric yardage, and we will then make another sample, a pre-production sample with that fabric yardage, and then after you approve that, we'll move into actual production. So these are the things that are needed to move into production. You need to have finished markers, you need to have a finished sample, you need to have all your materials, right? So this sort of like is the the best way to explain how to get into production actually. If you're doing production overseas and you don't have these things, it's okay. We can help build a sustainable supply chain for you here so that you have this forever moving forward. Just because you've done it a certain way in China does not mean that it is the right way to do it. You have literally no assets if you don't have these things, and it's putting your business in a position of risk. So we want to make sure you know where your materials are coming from, what your patterns look like, that they're correct. And then from there, you have that forever. You always have that. Whether you make 500 or 5 million units, your patterns are set, your tech pack is ready to go, and everything is clear. So hopefully that makes sense. Indie Source can do some of these things. So you sign this and then it allows us to like jump in and do the work. But these are the key things to move into production. Awesome. Thanks so much.